Alright, so we're here in the Vosges. In German it's called Vogesen. Again, it's in Alsace, near Colmar in the Col du Schlucht, which is a really funny mix between French and German. It basically means valley of the valley or something like that. Schlucht is German, Col is French, but everything here is in two languages. I have a new camera, which is cool. It's the DJI Osmo Pocket 3, and I hope it works. It's pretty cool. It has like a gimbal, as opposed to the GoPro, which I've been using before for those hikes. And yeah, I'm excited to test it. Alright. So yeah, what I've been thinking about is stillness and learning to like stillness and quiet, which I think is probably hard for a lot of people nowadays, for more and more people, because we live in such a non-quiet time. There's constant distractions, there's noise everywhere, there's loud cars, there's music, there's social media feeds that want your attention, there's your job that wants your attention, there's your family that wants your attention, there's your friends that want your attention. It's like a constant battle of attention. And sometimes you even seek out actively those distractions. I know I've been this way for most of my life. Basically, I had a really hard time falling asleep without listening to audiobooks or podcasts or something. And basically, I ended up listening podcasts that I didn't really enjoy that much. Sometimes just because I found the voice to be kind of relaxing, or just to kind of like numb down this voice inside of my head. And for instance, I've been listening to one podcast which is called Dark Horse, which is two biologists, like a couple, like a married couple with 2 or 3 kids, Heather Heying and Brett Weinstein, which are a bit controversial. And they have been professors back in the day, but they got fired from Evergreen College, and basically they keep complaining about that. And they keep complaining about the academic system, which is very corrupt according to them. And also mainly they've been focusing on the whole COVID thing, that the vaccines were kind of a hoax. It's obviously very simplified, and they're smart people, and sometimes it's quite interesting to get insights into this. But sometimes I feel like I don't really need to hear about COVID vaccines anymore, and about how corrupt everything is, and how, I don't know, corrupt the whole American system is, and the whole healthcare system, which is probably true to some extent. But sometimes I don't really need that information. And it's mostly negative, of course. Also, they're very against the whole trans thing, very skeptical of it. And they're kind of pro-Trump, it turns out now. But whatever. I don't really care that much about this type of politics. And again, what also was striking to me is that Brett and Heather were mostly like arguing. Like half of the episode, it feels like they're mostly kind of passive-aggressively saying, I don't really understand your point, or something. They're kind of arguing in a kind of passive-aggressive manner. And it's not bad, it's kind of entertaining, but it's also not super entertaining. And at some point I felt like, why am I even listening to that? It's like that isn't really the stuff I'm most interested about. It doesn't really advance my life in any significant manner. It's not like I feel very energized afterwards, or entertained, or that I have new critical information on how to improve my life. Why do I do this? And the answer is to fall asleep. Because both of them have kind of pleasant voices, I think, especially Brett. I was able to fall asleep to them. So, yeah, it's kind of shameful in a way. I thought that I need like a clutch to fall asleep. It's kind of embarrassing that I can't just decide to fall asleep. Wow, this is really nice. So yeah, there's not huge mountains here, but still it's very beautiful, I think. It's kind of like, because there's not that many buildings and things here, it kind of feels like a fantasy world here sometimes. Also this here looks really nice, even though there's one person, so yeah. So yeah, again, I thought to myself, it's kind of embarrassing that I need a clutch to fall asleep to. And also, to be honest, it wasn't only the case for sleeping. I definitely caught myself more and more these last years just browsing aimlessly on Reddit or something, or on YouTube, instead of working. And I caught myself kind of trying to drown out this stillness. And I always needed something going on. I always needed music in the background. I always needed, like, something in me couldn't cope with stillness, couldn't live with stillness. And the obvious explanation is that, once there's stillness, you have to kind of like just be present. And I think, honestly, you could say it's something in me didn't want to be present, or couldn't cope with being present. Was it too painful? Was it too difficult with my ADHD tendencies? I don't know, it's very hard to say what exactly the reason is, but it felt like something in me always wanted to be distracted from the present moment, and I think it's really fair to say that I'm not that great at being present. And this is what I want to talk about. I think it's not great, and it's something that I want to change. That's the first step. Why do I want to change this? Because I noticed that, not really being present means not really living life, it feels like. It feels like kind of the days go by faster and faster, but you don't really remember what happened. You don't really stop to smell the roses, so to say. And that's kind of unfortunate. I would prefer if there would be more enjoyment in life, more presence, more beauty, more joy, all of these things. And also, I notice that the more I distract myself, the more distractions I need, and also the harder it feels to focus, the harder it feels to fall asleep, the more reliant I get on these clutches, be it music to study, or ASMR videos to relax, or podcasts to fall asleep to. And yeah, it's like you're basically training yourself in a bad way. Like a person that always eats McDonald's and drinks Coca-Cola, or somebody who smokes more and more. It's harder and harder to stop, it feels like, and it's harder and harder to be present, to study, to sleep, to work, to relax. Okay. And I recently heard Eckhart Tolle. He's the author of the book Power of Now and many other great books in this regard. He basically talked about different dimensions of living. The one is the horizontal dimension, which is basically how we in the West mostly live life. It's like achieving things, it's moving forward, it's accomplishing tasks, it's doing things, it's planning, it's working, it's also, I guess, studying, it's preparing, planning, it's the whole doing dimension. But there's another dimension which he calls the vertical dimension, which is basically being present. And this really stuck with me because I think there's something to it. If you're only in the horizontal dimension, your life can be successful in some way, but it lacks depth, it lacks breadth. I mean, we all know examples of people who are very successful in the outer world, but are very unhappy, very rich billionaire CEOs or whatever who commit suicide or something. How is that possible? Well, if you're good in the horizontal dimension doesn't automatically mean you're good in the vertical dimension. Maybe they're even kind of working against each other. And it feels like, why even bother with the vertical dimension, with presence? Well, life isn't really worth living if you're only in the horizontal dimension, is what Eckhart Tolle says. And I think I tend to agree, because I'm a person that's definitely more in the horizontal dimension, like a type A personality, and it feels like I'm missing out quite a bit when it comes to important things in life, and I want to change that. I think I want to talk about this more in some other point. You can relate. I think this is also part of being in the vertical dimension. Instead of always walking, you need to stop sometimes to smell the roses, to look at the beautiful view, to look at the trees and just notice whatever is. And I think Eckhart also wrote a book about finding presence, about finding stillness, and he called it Doorways to the Now. And I read this, I don't fully remember all of them, but one of them was, I think, breathing. One of them was just noticing your body. One of them was, I think, just looking what's around you. And there were some other a bit more metaphysical ones. But what's important is you don't need to train necessarily to be in the vertical dimension. I guess maybe meditation teachers would say otherwise, and would say you can train being present by meditating. But he basically says you just need to kind of recognize that there is this other dimension, and just maybe it's more of a letting go. It's more of a letting go than a doing and training and setting a goal. Because once you set a goal, you're already in the horizontal dimension. So basically, it's maybe a bit of the opposite of what we're trained to do. If we want to accomplish something in our realm of the horizontal dimension, we gather information on how to do it, we make a plan, and then we try to achieve this plan. But with the vertical dimension, it's different. You don't really need to collect information necessarily. You don't need to make a plan. You just need to kind of recognize that there is this dimension and breathe, pause, just let it happen, kind of like. It's kind of a relinquishing, kind of a letting go thing. I'm not perfect in this regard either. I'm just a student myself. And maybe this is me talking like a type A personality again, like a horizontal person again. But all I'm saying is I'm trying to convey to you the information that I'm trying to understand myself. And maybe this is my brain is in the way, kind of. But all I'm telling you is I think this dimension exists, and I want to get better at widening my life experience through having times in my life, like right now when I'm hiking, where I focus more on the vertical dimension as opposed to the horizontal dimension. Okay. There's one thing I noticed though, and this is something I really wanted to share with you, is usually I could never fall asleep without audiobooks or podcasts again. But last summer vacation, which was in May and June 2024, when we were in Bretagne, I think I'm gonna upload some videos with this holiday again. It was beautiful. I noticed actually I can sleep without audiobooks and podcasts. At first I was a bit like hesitant. It was almost like trying to walk without clutches for the first time, or driving a bike without like things on the side to stabilize you. But I didn't have battery on my iPhone, and so I couldn't even listen to anything, and so I was kind of forced to try to sleep without audiobooks. And lo and behold, it worked. And not only that, I felt like I felt more rejuvenated the next morning. It felt great, actually. And even while falling asleep, instead of being anxious about not being able to fall asleep, I tried to focus on something else. And this is something very new for me. And it was kind of like a eureka moment, like an aha moment. I basically noticed, hey, it's actually beautiful that there's no distraction. The stillness is actually beautiful. It's actually it's hard to describe really, but you know that feeling when you're really hot, it's like the summer, it's 35 degrees outside, and then you jump into the pool or into the lake. That's a beautiful feeling. Or let's say you really want to go to the restroom, and then finally, after waiting, you can relieve yourself. It's a beautiful feeling, maybe of relief. Maybe that's a good word too. And it's like maybe it's a bit hard to describe, but what I'm trying to convey to you is I think you can learn to really enjoy stillness, because stillness is beautiful. And so basically when I was lying in bed and there was no sound around me, no talk about COVID and whatever else, and about trans people that I didn't really care so much about, I was basically like, actually, that's beautiful. Of course, there's gonna be small things that are annoying. Maybe it's your partner snoring a bit, or I don't know, you hear some outside noises, but I think you can get used to that too. And then finally, it was just kind of like aha moment, because this stillness felt like beautiful fresh water or something. And I think I kind of got addicted to it. And I think there's also a case to be made for training yourself to be not so hypersensitive. Because I am obviously quite hypersensitive to noises, especially. But the more you block out noises, the more hypersensitive you become. So if you're similar to me, I kind of encourage you to sometimes, bite on your teeth and train yourself in whatever is annoying you usually. This is also a quite common method in psychology or psychotherapy called exposure therapy. So I think one of the most effective methods for people who are very scared of flying, for instance, is to just let them fly a few times, and then eventually they notice that it's okay. I think with stuff like noise sensitivity, you can't just, sleep next to a highway and then you're cured. I think it doesn't work this way. However, I think there's something to be said for trying to still balance your life, because for me, sometimes I feel like living just in a hut all by myself would be a good life for me, because I would be really peaceful. I could be thinking a lot and working and writing. But then again, is that really a balanced life? Is that really the life I want to live, just completely isolated in a shack somewhere? I'm not sure. And I think it's good that sometimes I get out of my comfort zone. It's a lot about comfort zones too. And again, I think before the stillness was really outside of my comfort zone, not being distracted. And then little by little you expand your comfort zone, and you get actually accustomed to working without music, and you get accustomed to sleeping without audiobooks. And I think that's possible. And not only is it possible, you will notice that it's kind of beautiful, actually. It's kind of like refreshing. Again, like drinking a beautiful cup of very fresh water when you're very thirsty. That's what it kind of feels like. Yeah. Let me know what you think about this idea, and maybe you made similar experiences, and maybe you could find other examples where you could kind of train yourself to enjoy stillness, be it when working out. How about you don't listen to loud music. Instead, you leave it out. Or when you work, again, don't listen to music all the time. Don't distract yourself. Just focus on the work. Sleep is a very good way to train this. And there's many other things. Maybe if you're in the car, don't always listen to the radio. Maybe just look outside sometimes and just try to be present. Try to be able to train yourself to accept stillness, and not only accept stillness, but enjoy it. Because I think especially as people who are very hypersensitive and kind of overstimulated by all the stimuli, why would we continue to stimulate ourselves when we're at home? Why do we punish ourselves in this way? Wouldn't it make sense for us to recharge by cutting out the distractions, by cutting out the noise, by cutting out the little dopamine hikes? I think it makes sense, but listening to little bits of music or scrolling through social media feeds gives us a bit of dopamine too, and especially people who struggle with ADHD struggle with this, and maybe this is kind of like the tension between being hypersensitive and also having ADHD in a way. I noticed I was filming a bit high. I hope my whole video isn't just filming the sky, but if it is, then I hope you can accept this. This is the first time really using this device, and I might have filmed a bit too high. Whatever. I might have held the handheld camera a bit too high. So yeah. Another thing I try to do is, while hiking, also trying to be more present, is to basically I try to be more present while hiking. I try to not only think about plans and what projects I'm going to accomplish and what tasks I still have at work and so on. I try to be present, and I try to find some techniques and doorways to get there. Maybe that's another type A thing to do. But basically, instead of having my attention in my head, which is being a thinker, I try to move my attention down to my heart area, to my chest area. And you can try this as well. You can think about water levels rising down from your head level down to your chest area, kind of where your heart is located. And some people would call it heart chakra or something, but I don't know much about these chakras. And basically stay there, and maybe notice your breathing and how your chest moves up and down. And then also, maybe that's a bit special about me, but I feel like sometimes I would be happier if I thought less, and maybe if I just had a lower frequency of thoughts. And so basically I imagine myself, or I visualize myself being in my chest, and thus not thinking that much. I basically, let's say it's a trade-off. I trade off some of my mental clarity and my mental prowess for presence, for being into my body. I basically visualize it. It's kind of like an RPG character. You basically, instead of just leveling up your intelligence, now that you lower your focus to your chest area, you level up more your body, your presence, your I guess you could call it your your vertical dimension. The breadth, the width of whatever you encounter. And also I tended to visualize myself being surrounded kind of by a blue light, kind of like in Star Wars or something. The light that surrounds the blue lightsaber of Luke Skywalker or something. Which is a pleasant, calming, cleansing energy around me, instead of a red thinking energy, which usually is there when I'm in my head. And so basically that's a small exercise I did, and it was quite good for me, honestly, to remind myself to get back into my my body, is to basically lower my focus to my chest area, to kind of trade off my thinking mind for a more feeling body, mind, and then visualizing like a beautiful blue light emanating around my body and also kind of protecting me from maybe overstimulation from loud noises or other unpleasant thoughts. And then also I noticed when I'm visualizing like this, it's a beautiful feeling. It's a similar feeling to when I'm in bed and not listening to stuff. It's like a cleansing feeling, like rejuvenating, so to say. It's actually quite beautiful. It's a different way of living almost, like, because I'm so used to being in this headspace of thinking and overthinking, which feels very red and kind of dense and kind of like tense. Being in my body, being in my chest, being in this kind of feeling state is just much more pleasant. It's just calm, relaxed. It's beautiful, it's joyful. I don't know a better word. So yeah, these were my thoughts, and this is me trying to be more present. So yeah, these were my thoughts about learning to enjoy stillness and changing my life from a very distracted, overstimulated, oversensitive being to maybe letting more stillness and more of this vertical dimension into my life, which I think is going to make my life more fulfilling, definitely. And I invite you to try the same. Of course, you can read books about this, but maybe you don't need that much information anymore. Maybe you just need to try it out for yourself, and I think you're going to notice a change. You're going to notice your life becoming better and more beautiful. So yeah, this is a kind of beautiful view from here. Look at this, there's like a dog picture. I'm not sure what this means, but it looks kind of cool. Alright. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. And yeah, talk to you soon. Bye. So this place is called the Alsace, I think. Back there, this is Mulhouse. Okay. Ich geh mal wieder runter, okay? Piu. There's like a big Jesus up there. It's kind of like in Rio de Janeiro or something. Can you see it? It's kind of funny actually. Table d'orientation du monument de Galt. On est au monument du Galt, érigé par le club vosgien, section de Colmar en 1991. Egwisheim, this has a famous Christmas market. Herlisheim, we've been there too. Blauen, Ritzlihorn, Jungfrau, Mönch, Hoburg, Staufen. En reconnaissance de la divine protection accordée par le Sacré-Cœur de Jésus et par l'intervention de Notre-Dame des Trois Épis, à tous nos chers enfants d'Alsace victimes de la Grande Guerre 1914-1918, en souvenir des glorieux combattants français et alliés tombés sur les champs de bataille environnants. So this is, as many monuments, a remembrance of the victims of the First World War, 1914-1918. So sad, all these wars in Europe. Yeah.